Greetings to all you Earthlings tuning into my transmission for the first time. This is your host Fury, coming in from the far side of the galaxy. Recently, I've been getting into Earthling cartoons, and there's one cartoon in particular that's caught my interest. A cartoon by the name of Final Space. Final Space is an adult sci-fi adventure comedy created by an Earthling named Olin Rogers. He's a producer, writer, and owner of a soda parlor apparently, weirdest side hustle I've ever heard of, but hey, you do you. And the creative lead behind the show. With its third season airing March 20th, I think it'd be rather timely for this alien to give their opinion. So listen to Fury Transmission as I walk you through the good, the bad, and the ugly of Final Space Season 1. The basic spoiler-ridden summary is that our protagonist, Gary Goodspeed, runs into this strange alien while serving his prison sentence aboard the Galaxy 1. After forging a bond and aiming at Mooncake, Gary sets off to keep his new buddy safe from a tyrannical tyrant known as the Lord Commander. Along the way, he runs into Avocado, a Catman father who's trying to rescue his Catboy son from the Lord Commander, and Quinn Ergon, a dedicated soldier looking to save the Earth from a breach that threatens to suck it into the titular Final Space, lest these monstrous creatures called Titans be unleashed upon the universe. Some stuff happens. Character death, romance the usual, but the season ends with Quinn closing the breach, but not before she and the Earth get pulled into the other side. As Gary slowly runs out of oxygen in the vacuum of space, there is one last ray of light and one last ray of hope for our protagonist, as the season concludes. With the summary out of the way, let me walk you through the good, the bad, and the ugly of Final Space Season 1. I know this part is called the good, but it honestly should be called the beautiful. Final Space has some of the best artwork I've ever seen. Each setting really stands out due to the color and rare use of shadings emphasize certain moments. A particular favorite of mine happens to be the background used for light folding. It's reminiscent of Hyperdrive from Star Wars, but the color really makes it pop. The music is also great. Most of the time it goes unnoticed, but when the music hits hard, it hits hard, bringing outside talent to make it stand out. The most notable example of this is Soul Seppi's Enter 1. A song I can't play for obvious reasons, and while I could have done a cover, I decided against it, so go ahead and hit that like button as a thank you. Clever sound design is just a tool in Final Space's toolbox used to enhance its best quality, that being well-executed payoffs. A lot of the early episodes are dedicated to setting up these payoffs, probably due to the odd way the show is structured. You see, Final Space has three main characters, each with their own seemingly separate goals, and each of these separate goals are wonderfully woven together to create a single cohesive narrative that only lapses in a few places. This slow build-up and foreshadowing makes certain moments carry far more emotion than they would in the hands of less skilled writers. The best of these standout moments I'd like to talk about come from the best episode of the season, Chapter 6. Chapter 6 has scene after scene worth raving about. Gary cementing his friendship with Avocado, the gayest moment two straight men have ever shared, and of course, the single best scene of the season.
No, take care of my boy.
I can't get over how deliciously sad this scene is. To rip away victory from our protagonist and turn it into crushing defeat is peak storytelling. What's even better storytelling is the way the death fits into Final Space as a whole. A character's death can't simply be sad, it has to feel fitting for the character and playing to the story's themes, which Avocado's death certainly does. The ongoing theme of the show is the idea of family and the things you do for them. Avocado's sacrifice not only plays into this theme, but it forces other characters to fit into it as well. Particularly Gary, as he tries to follow Avocado's dying wish and goes from being Gary Goodspeed to Gary Dadspeed. Since we're talking about Gary's growth as a character, it would be best to move on to the next section. I understand that one of the key parts of character growth is using a low position as a starting point, but my god does Gary start low. And it's not even a good low like Luke from Tales of the Abyss, it's Gary coming off as one of the most annoying things in the galaxy. Just doesn't seem to understand the danger or the consequences. He walks up to the Lord Commander like it's nothing, nearly dies of an overdose, and nearly gets himself and little Kato, the kid his best friend told him to protect, killed on a suicide mission. And that's not even the worst of it. You see, Gary starts out as a prisoner because he destroyed 92 ships in a small Mexican restaurant. I can excuse that, but I can't excuse the bar scene which led up to the mishap, where Gary pursues Quinn relentlessly despite her clear disinterest. It doesn't help that he's also been sending Quinn messages for the past 5 years while he's in prison, which goes beyond cringe and into the creepy creeper side of things, so big yikes there. While he does grow over the course of the season, it doesn't make the earlier episodes easier to watch. In fact, the biggest thing keeping me going throughout most of the early episodes was Avocado. He's a great character and Cody Galloway does wonders breathing life into him, but the reason he was the most interesting character for me is due to a much bigger problem. Out of all the three main characters, Gary, Quinn, and Avocado, the latter has a remarkably better plot. Gary's story of befriending and protecting Mooncake is fine at best, and Quinn's plotline about protecting the Earth is store brand for how generic it is. The only one that stands out is Avocado's plot of saving his son. It's generic, but it's also relatable. You don't need to show flashbacks or even character to justify the goal, that's just how simple and good it is. It's so good it ends up detracting from the other characters, especially when early on Gary is a buffoon and early Quinn is kind of way too okay with leaving people to die. I end up wanting less of them and more of Avocado. In retrospect, it might have been better to have Avocado as the main protagonist up until his death and then shift the leading role onto Gary. It would have kept the most interesting plotline at the forefront and give the audience some distance from early Gary so he's not as overbearing. This brings me to the worst episode of Season 1, Chapter 3. The main plot of the episode focuses on Gary and Avocado trying to find a safe place to leave Mooncake, only to find that their choice of Yarno isn't safe, so they quickly escape. Our protagonists begin and end in the same position they started off in, which is not good storytelling. The fact that the plot only advances whenever the episode cuts over to Quinn investigating the breach is even worse storytelling. There's honestly not much to complain about because so little actually happens. The only thing worth noting aside from Quinn and a bit of foreshadowing is Gary nearly dying of an overdose because at least that has some good animation to go along with it.
Oh, he has a popsicle man!
I mentioned it briefly before, but the show's habit of cutting away is a major problem. In the early episodes when our protagonists are separated, the show cuts away to tell their part of the story. A necessary evil to keep the plot going, but it does serve to break up the action in an unsatisfying way. And with the bad out of the way, let us move on to the final section, the ugly. In terms of ugly, we have no ugly. That's not to say Final Space is flawless. I mean, I just spent half of this transmission complaining about it. It's flawed for sure, but it definitely succeeds at way more than it fails. I know it sounds corny to say it gets good after X number of episodes, but Final Space begins to find its stride by chapter 4 and it really gets going towards the end after all the setup is done and the show can revel in its strongest aspect, the payoffs that were set up episodes ago. Aside from that, being a successful adult cartoon that isn't an episodic comedy is already impressive enough, but to do that and have the ambition to try something unorthodox, even if unsuccessful, is worthy of praise. In conclusion, I give Final Space a 7 snow cones out of 10. The beginning is kind of bland, but once you get to the stuff with flavor, you find yourself really enjoying it. Honestly, in a genre that hasn't done that much to change since The Simpsons, Final Space stands out as a testament to what happens when you try new things, and that's something I think we can all take away. I certainly know that it's something I need. I'm just a poor little alien transmitting to a faraway planet. Risk are risk, but nothing is ever seized without trying your best. And for those of you that feel the same way when trying new things, here's a little clip for you.
Make me a promise, son. Save the Earth. Nah, you're right. Universe sounds much cooler.
What if I can't do it?
Try your best.
What if my best isn't good enough?
It's good enough for me.
A beautiful message to end my first transmission on. I know it's rough and shoddy, so leave your criticisms in the comments and I'll see what I can do. And hit that subscribe button so you know when I upload my review of Final Space Season 2. It should be up this 20th, hopefully. With those as my final words, I'll leave you with this. The stars shine and the cosmos smiles down at us. If they can, then you can too. This is Fury, ending transmission.